Hello again, welcome to Maths is Not a Mystery. Today we're going to look at how to divide decimals. We're going to start with the easiest version of dividing decimals, which is dividing a decimal by a whole number. So there you've got 0.75 divided by 5. You need to be able to do long division for most of this, so you would be setting this up in a way that says how many 5s are there in 0.75. So that's going to be 5. How many 5s in 0.75? Okay, you set it up like that, and before you even begin, put the decimal point in place up above the question. Now you can completely forget about the decimal point and just do your ordinary basic long division. So how many 5s are there in 0? Of course none. How many 5s are there in 7? We're going to look at next. There's 1 5 there, so no zeros, none in 0, 1 there. And of course, what was 1 5? It was 5. So you subtract 7, take away 5 is 2. Drop this 5 down here, and your next question is how many 5s are there in 25? There are 5. 5 5s actually are 25, so 0 left over there, and you finish the question. So 0.75 divided by 5 is 0.15, or 0.15 I should say, because it's not really 15, is it? So that's pretty straightforward. If you're doing an ordinary question like that, dividing by a whole number, it's a straightforward long division, which you just do as normal, but ignore that decimal point. Put it in there before you start, and it means you can forget about it. Now the next step is to look at dividing by a decimal, and that's a little bit more complicated. So the next question we've got here, 24 divided by 0.2. Now when you're going to do this, what you need to do is make sure that the thing you're dividing by, that's called the divisor, in this case 0.2, needs to be a whole number, because it's really difficult to divide by decimals, and you're going to get yourself in a terrible mess if you try to. So if you think about this, if we wanted to turn that into a whole number, the easiest way we could do it would be to multiply it by 10 so that that number becomes 2. If we're going to do that and we're going to make the question work correctly, we also need to do the same thing all the way around. So divide that by 10 as well, so that that becomes 240. So we've now got a new question that says 240 divided by 2. Okay, so when we do that, let's start taking a look at what happens. It's very simple. We can do this one in our head. 240 divided by 2. We don't need to bother doing any long division. We know that it's 120. Now, that's it. Surprisingly, it's finished. You don't have to put it back into dividing by 10, because what we did is we increased everything in proportion with itself. 24 became 10 times bigger, and we divided it by a number that was also 10 times bigger than 0.2. So there are 120 2's in 240, but there's also 120 0.2's in 24. So we don't have to mess around with this 120 and start turning it back into 12 or 1.2 or anything like that. It's finished. So that's quite straightforward there, isn't it? So all we did there is we found a way to make our divisor into a whole number by this time multiplying it by 10. Could have been multiplying it by 100 in another case, couldn't it? Or even by 1,000. Do exactly the same to the other side of the question. Carry out your division, which can be in your head if you can do it, or written out as a long division if you can't. And then that's it. Your answer is finished. Okay, on to the hardest version now. And the hardest version is going to look like this. Now this is obviously one we can't do in our head. 617.76 divided by 1.2. Remember what we said first of all, get the divisor to become a whole number. So again, that's going to be multiplied by 10, isn't it here? Times it by 10 so that that becomes 12. So times this by 10, and that means it becomes 6177.6. Now that's still a decimal, but it doesn't matter because we're just going to be dividing it by 12. Let's take a look how we do this now then. So we're going to set out a long division. All right. Now, carrying out the long division, how many 12s are there in 6? Obviously none. How many 12s are there in 61? There are 5. 12 5s are 60. Subtract, that leaves you with 1. Bring down that 7. Now we're doing how many 12s are there in 17? There's 1 12 in 17. 1 12 is 12. Subtract, 17 take away 12 is 5. Bring down this 7. How many 12s in 57? Well, 4 12s are 48. So there's 4 12s. Let's go over that in slightly better pen there. 4 12s are 48. Put the 48 down here. 57 take away 48 is 9. Bring down the 6. And how many 12s in 96? There are 8 of them. Now, let's just take a look at what we did there, because the answer is not going to be 5,148. The answer is going to be 514.8, because we are going to put the decimal point above where it was in the question. Excuse my pen failing miserably. 514.8. Okay, so that's it. That's completed. That's how you do the hardest version of them. Once again, change your divisor into a whole number by multiplying it by 10 or a multiple of 10. Change the other part of your question, which is actually called the dividend, would you believe? Change that part by exactly the same amount, times 10, times 100, whatever it is, and then just carry out your ordinary long multiplication, your long division. And to make sure you know where the point is, you put it directly above where it was in the question. Okay, that's finished. So that's how to divide by decimals. Hope you've enjoyed that. Hope it's been helpful, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.